G'day, A.J. Mahari here, with a whiteboard mess in an effort to talk to you about borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and the covert vulnerable narcissist. It's sort of a contrast in comparison, but less of a comparison, if that makes any sense. So here is, I'm not very good or neat on a whiteboard. Excuse me. So in the first column, mostly in green, is BPD. In the middle column is NPD. And in mostly red on the far right is vulnerable covert NPD. Okay, so that's not going to make too much sense to you. Maybe I'll make a PDF that I'll put on my website where I'll put this video up after it's on YouTube. So anyway, yes, here we are, mess and all. And I only have the little board right now, and I have to do something about cleaning up the room to get a bigger board. I was going to get a bigger board the other day. So I apologize for this because you're not really going to be able to see it too well. And then there's the light reflection, yes, because we all have those halo lights shining on us. Now let me see, can I do it this way? Okay, so I'll try to do it this way. I don't expect you to be able to read it though, unfortunately. I'm not verbose, I swear, okay? So anyway, I'm going to be doing more in depth on this. So this definitely might not be the most in-depth. Oh, I can't even hold it, right? This is, okay, hopefully a little comedy here. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so, borderline personality disorder. False self, okay? Arrested emotional development, pretty much by the age of 2, as is said in object relations theory. NPD, false self, strongly defended lost self. I should have said that in a minute. But false self across the board here. Vulnerable covert narcissist, false self. So I've seen out there, I'm not here to criticize people. I'm just here to give my opinion on, my information and knowledge, and then sometimes, oops, a different opinion than somebody else. So this isn't working too well, is it? But I will get this set up better. I'm going to, yes. I have seen where people have said, people with BPD have a failed false self. That's not true. And then people with narcissistic personality disorder, false self, and then people try to say that the vulnerable, covert, inverted, closeted, etc. narcissist has maybe they're struggling with a false self. No. Here's what clearly I understand from all the theory I've ever read. They all have a false self. False selves aren't struggling, okay? Until unless people with BPD get into a lot of significant therapy, then that starts happening for sure. But so the false self presentation in each is a full false self presentation. There's no such thing as a failed false self. So in BPD, there's a remnant of a fleeting self, but lost self, arrested emotionally developed self. So you get this fleeting remnant of somebody, a piece of who they could be if they would really go and get into a long-term healing recovery process. So they have some access once in a while to little teeny fragments of the otherwise fragmented off, split from child ego state. Okay, so in the narcissist, this split off child ego state between the ages of 3 to 5 is a deeper woundedness, and the strongly defended, the lost self is strongly defended against by more entrenched, deeper, stronger labyrinth of infantile narcissistic defenses in narcissistic personality than in BPD. So then it's the same thing over here for the vulnerable narcissist as the narcissist. This is a mess, I apologize. So people with BPD, many of the supposed types, right, classic and petulant and whatnot, They externalize. Quiet borderline internalizes. People with NPD, now I've seen people say they internalize and don't externalize. Well, the lost arrested emotional development, the lost arrested self in narcissistic personality disorder is a more defended, lost self. So it's would be harder to get to in trying to treat somebody if they showed up with NPD and wanted treatment. So I believe that narcissists externalize everything because the only thing that they don't externalize in a way, well, no, that's not true. I believe that narcissists, whether fragile, vulnerable, etc., they externalize. Okay, I'll get into that in a minute. But narcissists externalize with omnipotent grandiosity. Grandiosity is a huge defense for them. So the false self replaces the narcissist's true self, otherwise true self that gets arrested emotionally, developmentally, and it's intended to shield the narcissist from narcissistic injury and self-imputing. What happens by self-imputing omnipotence? So the narcissist pretends, but let's say manifests, operates as if his false self is the real self. And the narcissist doesn't have necessarily, some are more aware than others, they don't necessarily have an awareness of that. But there are some out there, and one on YouTube, of course, who knows that. A narcissist in particular, a malignant narcissist I was referring to. So where was I? Oh yeah, so then we come over to the vulnerable, covert, closeted, inverted, fragile narcissist. They externalize, but with less grandiosity. They internalize at times narcissistic injury. And then because they have a more deflated ego anyway, and then upon getting a narcissistic injury, they have less of the defensive grandiosity like the overt narcissist. So they have a more deflated ego. And what happens there is they start to very much internalize at times the narcissistic injury. Okay. And then, well, I'll get to the rest of that later. So following my messy supposed chart here, people with BPD have no self-object, no self-coherence, no self-reference, no identity. No other object reference, no other way to relate to others really in any healthy way because there's no way to relate to self. How we relate to others comes from self first. And same is true for overt narcissists and the vulnerable narcissist. I'm not going to go vulnerable, covert, inverted, closeted, fragile every time. I'm just going to say vulnerable narcissist. That they don't have the self-object or the self-coherence recognition of self that's lost because they have imputed the omnipotent, grandiose false self as, quote, self, unquote. Narcissists don't really tend to question this at all, the way that people with BPD will often, and in therapy will often question more. So for people with BPD, there's mixed presentations of the false self. Sometimes hostile and aggressive, very much acting out and externalizing. And if somebody's got quiet BPD, or maybe a person with BPD who's getting better or working through therapy, might not be as hostile, as aggressive outwardly, but with the isolation factor and the withdrawal of the quiet borderline, and as I said, some people with BPD that are in recovery, whether classic BPD or not, they will have more internalization. So they will be passive aggressive often, but not, and they can be hostile and aggressive, but not as often. And of course, people with BPD have codependency also. And so here we have the presentation of the overt narcissist, outward as if social, right? Presentation, object other focused, no sense of a known self. They don't care, it's better defended. They have a more inflated ego, and so they seek supply, they predate on people, etc., for supply. They love praise and all that. They're also codependent. They feel superior and, quote, godlike, unquote, omnipotent, just above everybody else, etc., in what are really delusions of grandeur. And then, which is like a narcissistic presentation of something way overcompensatory. We see overcompensatory defenses in BPD, but really often without the same strength as the overt narcissist. The vulnerable narcissist has a mix of outward social presentation with isolated or a more not really internalized, because they're not really self-reflecting, but a sort of isolated withdrawal at times that can be similar to the quiet borderline, but they're not one and the same. So the vulnerable narcissist can be less social upon suffering a narcissistic injury because they have a more deflated ego and less grandiosity, meaning less protection. So what they often do is, poor me, collapse for rescue in their own way, seek sympathy, and that sort of thing as supply. And the vulnerable narcissist has a lot more codependency, or presents a lot more codependency. As I said in older videos, because I learn and I understand better and I go forward, I've said in older videos, it's like covert vulnerable narcissists are faking codependency. But no, sometimes they really get into a codependent space, more so than the overt, but they have codependency. But that's not the subject of this video. So, with this depleted ego and less grandiosity, that's where the vulnerable narcissist looks more like they're not exactly a narcissist compared to the overt. Because they're going to get into poor me, they might even cry, they might express a lot of emotion, and they're trying to seek supply then, empathy, sympathy, pity, etc. So coming back across here, what have I got here? In borderline personality, we see defensive relating. They seek to escape rescue, or seek to escape and be rescued from pain, triggers, emotional dysregulated, dissociative, the past here in the past here in the here now, in a dissociative way, in which there can be age regression or not. It's in those triggers, it depends. And so people with BPD seek the escape and rescue from their pain and their emotional dysregulation, which they often, unless they get a lot of treatment, they don't know why they're feeling what they're feeling. And so they seek that escape and rescue through you and from you. They fuse with you, they merge with you, and you equal their identity, and you are not seen. I think I kind of did that there for those two. Okay, so for BPD, self-harm, a lot of self-harm. Not everybody with BPD will self-harm, but majority. Self-harm, risky, impulsive behavior, attempts to regulate, not validate how they feel. They are also really wayward attempts to, quote, soothe, unquote, because people with BPD don't know how to soothe themselves. And they, risky, impulsive behavior of all types, as people are quite familiar with. Could be gambling, could be alcohol, could be eating, overeating, undereating, all kinds of different things in there. And so they're seeking and they're doing all of that self-soothing, and trying to actually escape more than even regulate their pain, because they really can't regulate it. They can't soothe it. Okay, my chart's a little messy here even for me. So, yes, and that doesn't really fit there, does it? What was I talking about? Okay, so never mind. And then with BPD again, we have low to no impulse control, poor impulse control in narcissists, probably somewhere between the borderline low to no impulse control and the overt narcissist. Low impulse control would be seen in the vulnerable narcissist, so it could look pretty mixed at times. Um, and in BPD, there's no self to take in love, kindness, or trust self or trust other. Okay, so that's why I'm always saying they don't know how to love you, they can't love you. There's no point during a relationship, no matter if you're having a fleeting experience of a fragment of the lost self, a good time with somebody, a moment or moments at a time. These people BPD untreated have no self to take in your love, kindness, or to trust you from. So there's no truth to the fact that people with BP actually get the intimacy and love that you're offering, and then all of a sudden, freak, and then have to like destroy you or something. It's not it at all. And it's not like then they're gonna, split the value because they received your love. No, it's not that at all. It's just the approach avoidance conflict going on as it's always going on or often going on. So then the overt narcissist will take in attention as supply. So where the person with BPD doesn't take in your love or your kindness and can't trust you, the overt narcissist will appreciate not kindness for kindness sake, right? But any kind of love, kindness, attention, trust, anything you give them, and especially praise, anything that can aggrandize and even more superinflate that ego, they take as supply. But they don't take it in, but they love it on the false self externalizing level of supply. So other equals, in the case of the overt narcissist and narcissists in general, other equals extension of self. To the person with BPD, other equals the self I can't find, the self I don't have, the something that's missing in me. And all this is very unconscious, by the way. And so, yes, the vulnerable narcissist will take in sympathy, empathy, attention, pity, or praise, etc., as supply. And for the vulnerable narcissist, other, that means you or another person, is seen still as an extension of self. And so people with BPD don't see you as an extension of self in the way that narcissists do, overt or vulnerable, covert, inverted, closeted, fragile narcissists, because they are seeking identity through you. Narcissists of any type are seeking supply. It's just might not sound much different. People think people with BPD are seeking supply. Not everybody in any of these categories is 100% all the same, but for the most part, people with BPD are not seeking supply. And so people with BPD have no frustration tolerance. Neither does the overt narcissist, really. They won't put up with much. And a vulnerable narcissist doesn't either. And people with BPD can't internalize love, can't internalize your love at all. That's why you get zero back. Because they don't have a self, they don't have love in there. The quote self they might reference, which is really a lack of self, they hate that absence of self. So they're going to give you more of that that's real, but the splitting, idealization, devaluation, by the way, yeah, either way, they are They can't take in anything, and they are still not seeing you because you still represent them unconsciously and or a parent representation. So that's pretty key. The other thing I wanted to touch on here, because this is by no means exhaustive, um, pathological envy in the overt narcissist. Very, very strong. Can see something like that in BPD that shouldn't be to the same degree as a narcissist, but hard to say, they're not all the same. Pathological envy, it's really important to note, doesn't mean that they're always jealous. Now, they may well be jealous. People with BPD can be jealous, and the vulnerable narcissist, they can all be jealous. But pathological envy refers to pathological hate, okay, which can be one of the mixed states in BPD, into valuation for sure, but it's not like they're aware of that. Okay, and you're the one they're getting hurt and more, but they're not aware that they're doing that to you because they're not seeing you. That's just an explanation, because it doesn't matter in your experience, because when you're the one taking it, you feels very personal, right? It's not like you can go, oh, well, they're just yelling at their father and I'll let it go over. No, it's very painful. So I think that this is just a little bit of a breakdown in terms of BPD, NPD, and the vulnerable narcissist. Because a lot of people out there are saying, I think, I don't know, I've read, I've heard, that, people with BPD and NPD are the same. That's not true. There is some comorbidity, but again, people shouldn't be guessing at that. And I'm going to have, I think I'm going to put that down now. I'm going to have a lot more coming on this because, and I'll try to do, if I do any more whiteboard stuff, I'm going to try to get a bigger whiteboard and do that in a much more effective way. So I was just going to, what was I going to add to that? And I can't see how long this has been going. That doesn't help, right? Just that, borderline personality is not the same as narcissistic personality, though there are overlaps. There are differences. The overt narcissist. Vulnerable narcissism is not ipso facto the same as borderline personality. The quiet borderline is not ipso facto a vulnerable narcissist. There are more delineations between these things than that. So, and also what I did have on the board, BPD, the overt narcissist, and the vulnerable, closeted, inverted, fragile, whatever other word I'm missing, covert narcissist, that doesn't cover malignant narcissistic personality disorder, which is different again. So people out there, when you're trying to figure all this out, and I've seen a video similar to this, but I didn't copy it. Like, the person did their own thing and probably didn't make as big a mess there as I did. But I thought missed a lot of points that were important. But again, I'm just here to offer you what I have to offer. You go watch somebody else's video and you can decide for yourself, what makes more sense, or whatever you take away from mine and whoever else's. So the point with this, though, is that malignant narcissistic personality disorder, or the malignant version of that, is different than narcissistic personality disorder I was just describing. And the vulnerable narcissist, the covert, the inverted, the closet, etc., is not a replacement of understanding or grouping for people with borderline personality. So having said that, I'd just like to add here that I'm going to have more videos coming on this too, because over the years, over the last 30 years of working with clients, and right now I've been working with some people also that have a BPD-X, and it is to the extreme of everything, what they're going through and what's happening. And so a lot of people think that means they're psychopathic. A lot of people think that means they have to be comorbid with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know about that yet. I'm still doing some research on this idea, because you got to remember, the pseudoscience of American psychiatry has no proof for its assertion that ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, can be a subtype of BPD in females only, the female variant of. I don't think they mean in all females with BPD, but still. I have clients reporting things that would indicate that. So it's still confusing to me. It's something I'd like to be a little more precise about because psychiatry has not proven that. It was a big pharma funded bias study wherein, factor one was aloofness and factor two, or vice versa, was in the conclusion was not emotional, like not much emotionality. We have to remember how long these people are going to be assessed. In other words, how short a time. So aloofness, it's too vague really to hang your hat on or to say it's a scientific evidentiary, evidence of anything. And sometimes people with BPD have tremendous volatile emotions and mixed mood states and changing roller coaster emotions often. And not everybody with BPD has the same presentation. So lots of people with BPD might be in a sort of just numbed out place, maybe from substances, alcohol, or whatever, maybe just from shutting down. So I really question that study. But having said that, I think there's definitely there is a severity to BPD that is already talked about online. I'm going to have more comment about that. I refer to it as 10 to 15%, but I don't know about the stats. But I've heard other professionals say 10%. So somewhere around that, where there is this extreme presentation in BPD that doesn't necessarily automatically indicate comorbidity with NPD, or that the pseudoscience of American psychiatry, which has not proven anything, they only have a theory that there can be this subtype in some women, that BPD in some women is a female variant of antisocial personality disorder. But I will say I have had clients reporting to me recently, and I fully well know they're telling me the truth, and I absolutely believe them, that this very severe presentation of BPD might rise higher and might be something else, but it's just still ill-defined out there. But when I work with clients, we might use all kinds of terminology. It doesn't matter to me. We just need to get to the understanding of what's happened for them and what they need to do about it in their here and now. So I hope that was helpful. It's not comprehensive. It's just kind of a quick way to do it. And I haven't hit on all the points. And some people would say that overt narcissists internalize and don't externalize. And others would say the same of the vulnerable narcissist. But compared to the mixed, externalization or internalization in BPD, I think that the narcissist, the overt narcissist, vulnerable narcissist externalize the false self as they predate and as they seek after you to, suck you dry of supply. I think that's an externalized reality. Even though they have this self-imputing, omnipotent, false self that is layered over utter incredible amounts of defenses for narcissists, to the point where you never see a narcissist come along on I haven't on this channel or any other and say, well, why is everybody saying that about me? People with BPD do that all the time because they have different feeling states, and even though they're lacking a self and they are living through a false self, it's not as strong as a narcissistic false self, but it's strong. And the other thing about that too is, people with BPD can have much greater chance. They can heal and they can recover. Narcissists, there's more pioneering. Not pioneering, it's already known, but schema therapy and transference-focused psychotherapy to a point, and maybe other modalities are being looked at as potential treatments, and some professionals are using them. If a narcissist presents, right, they often won't go for therapy, especially the overt narcissist. But I know even in my work, I do see vulnerable narcissists. They do come, and they might be more allied with the idea that they're codependent with their codependency, but then the vulnerable narcissist presentation is there as well. So that doesn't mean everybody with codependency is a vulnerable narcissist. So hopefully that was helpful, and it's just my effort to try to, just say what I have to say on this. You're likely hearing other information elsewhere, and I'm not going to say, oh, I'm all right and they're all wrong. No, but I just think whatever you think that fits for you. And a lot of people are so busy vilifying people with BPD, NPD, vulnerable narcissism that they don't care. And so that's up to you. And the other thing I would just say quickly is that with malignant narcissists, which I didn't talk about here at all, there is no equivalent called malignant borderline personality. There isn't. There's a YouTuber out there, a female, just so I can denote from, in case somebody else thinks because I'm not talking about other people. And I'm nothing against this YouTuber, but they're the only one to use. Okay, there's another one used it based on this one. But basically they say malignant borderline, but that's a misnomer. There's just nothing out there. There's nothing in the clinical literature to suggest malignant borderline. That might fit for that 10 to 15% I'm talking about. But when I researched it and when I started Google searching it, I found nothing in journal articles, and all I got directed back to was somebody's YouTube channel. So I'm not saying they say a lot of great stuff. I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about or anything. But this malignant borderline, no, not like malignant narcissism. But when you're getting hurt by these people, whether, especially borderlines, you got to remember that, like, I hope everybody will give this some thought. The person that you're with or were with, or you're not sure if it's on, off again, etc., not everybody with BPD is the same. They don't all have that 10% severe, incredibly horrific, what they do to people presentation. And then there's people with BPD that don't hurt others. And the function of splitting in BPD starts in the misattunement, affect synchrony, in the beginning of life when attachment is not happening. And there's an emotional onslaught of abandonment that is, like I said, imprinted in the mind. But the other thing I'll just say is that BPD and narcissistic personality disorder have never been proven to be biological or inherited. So we don't know about that. Psychiatry doesn't know about it, though they're going along and making up the stuff like BPD is this percentage heritable, this percentage of. They don't know that. They can't know that. So anyway, what most people with codependency need to hear today is that hopefully this was helpful to you. But what you need, that's not what you need to hear today. What you need to hear today is time to take care of you, time to get into your own healing recovery process. And some people have to go around again. Some people want to get the ex back. Some people get hoovered and take them back. And really, the cycles just all speed up. So BPD is not a brain disease. It's not a neurological problem. And when there is, with adverse childhood experience, it affects the brain in all therapeutic modalities for BPD, not so much DBT, but the others, there is neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is at its peak from birth to 25 or 26 years old. But what we now know is neuroplasticity is very much happening for people of all ages. So when they're in, working in therapy. So, and that's true for people with codependency. And the other thing I'll just say really quickly is people with codependency, like people with BPD, overt narcissist and vulnerable narcissist and malignant narcissist, and others in cluster, a couple things in cluster C and cluster A, all have a false self. So the false self doesn't mean that the codependent false self is the same as the borderline false self, because the borderline false self isn't the same as the narcissistic false self. And it's really all different in antisocial personality disorder, in psychopathy. It's all very different. And so, and I follow the work, well, I'll talk about that later in another video. So I hope that was helpful. And again, try not to be so much worried about guessing if they're just BPD. or they're a narcissist, or, if they're narcissists, do they also have this? Are they that? Oh my God, they're psychopathic. Because you know what? All that focus isn't really going to help you understand what you need to know more about yourself and how you need to take more personal responsibility for taking care of you, for getting yourself away from that person, for going no contact, for getting into a healing recovery journey. Anyway, hit the little picture of me there and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And take care.